Welcome, it is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. Still awaiting the start of Packers training camp and really training camp for all 32 NFL teams. It's right there. This is kind of that, at least the week that I'm releasing this video. It's that time where you really start to miss football. You know, you have baseball, but NBA's done, NHL's done, baseball's in the All-Star break. And so we're kind of really just waiting patiently for the NFL season to start, or just NFL action in general. Training camp will suffice for the time being. Wanted to look at the Packers roster today, and a roster that is littered with talent, littered with youth, and an organization in the Packers that the past 2 years has, boasted about having the youngest NFL roster among all 32 teams. 2 years in a row, could very well be the case again. This year we'll have to wait and see how things shake out once the rosters are trimmed down at the end of the preseason to the final 53-man version. I wanted to focus in on, there's so much emerging talent, young talent on this team. 3 guys specifically that I believe this year can take that jump from pretty good player, pretty solid player, consistent, relied upon, to, oh shit, this is a star. This is a star in the making. This is a star to superstar caliber player for the Green Bay Packers. I think there's more than 3, potentially, but there's 3 that I really targeted in on for this video. And I want to start with Tucker Kraft. You go back to pretty much right after the season ended in January, lost in the playoffs to Philadelphia, and a couple of days later, Matt LaFleur was kind of doing some closing remarks, final presser, buttoning some things up, and a lot of the questions, circulate around reflection on the year that was, and individual players and performances, not from the game against Philadelphia. That press conference happens right after the game. This is a couple of days removed from it. And you sort of reflect on the year that was for the offense, the defense, the teams, individual players. And Matt LaFleur back in January was asked by someone, I don't know who the reporter was, if Tucker Kraft could end up being sort of cut from that cloth of a George Kittle, a Travis Kelce. And you're talking about 2 of, if not the 2 best tight ends in the National Football League, right, for the last handful of years. You look at the last 6, 7, 8 years, have there been 2 better tight ends than Travis Kelce and George Kittle? Both still doing it. Kittle, younger than Kelce. Kelce, a little more wear and tear on the body at this point in his career. But you're talking about, not Tucker Kraft is there right now. He's not in that tier, but could he get there? And Matt LaFleur was asked about that way back in January, and his response was, and I quote, I got to find it. Here it is. Matt LaFleur said, when asked if Tucker Kraft can end up being a George Kittle or a Travis Kelce type tight end, LaFleur said, 100%, and I think that's on us to make sure that we find him and feature him. When he gets the ball in his hands, you feel him. So if there is an area that we got to do a better job on, I would say featuring the tight end. I think the phrase and the words chosen by Matt LaFleur are very interesting. It's not him saying, hey, we got to get the ball more to Tucker Kraft. He's talking about featuring Tucker Kraft. When you talk about featuring a player within your offense, you're talking about a spotlight. You're talking about a go-to guy. And LaFleur, and I'm sure a lot of the brain trust on that coaching staff, believe that Kraft can elevate his game to more levels. Kraft certainly seems to think so, and he's a guy that's just easy to root for, easy to rally around. His comments about wanting to beat Detroit last year, even though Green Bay went 0-2, talking this offseason already after OTAs about the goal being to win the division, get back the NFC North, things of that nature. Tucker Kraft is very much so kind of an old school player. He'll put his hand in the dirt. He'll pave holes in the ground game when need be. He's a yak monster. He can go out, run routes. He's a mismatch for smaller safeties. He's a mismatch for slower linebackers. And keep in mind, there's a sort of trajectory that he's on. Tucker Kraft will be entering his 3rd season, and it's not as though I'm looking at a player who in his first 2 seasons didn't do much, and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, he's going to be a star. Everything is trending in that direction for Tucker Kraft. Green Bay's never had a tight end, ever. This is kind of crazy to think about. Green Bay's never had a tight end that has reached 1,000 receiving yards in a season. And I'm trying to find, I think it was Paul Kaufman. I looked this up before. Yeah, Paul Kaufman, most receiving yards in a season by a tight end for the Green Bay Packers in history, came in 1983. He had 814. Second on that list, you'll remember the Texas product, Jermichael Finley in 2011 had 767. So the most receiving yards in a season in Packers history by a tight end, 814. Tucker Kraft had 707 last year and only had 70 targets. You break that down. This is a guy who started and played in each and every single game, and we'll get to that in a second. Tucker Kraft had 4.1 targets per game. I know there's a lot of mouths to feed on this offense. Tucker Kraft is one of the more proven players in this passing game. That's already shown a lot. I would like to see that 4.1 target per game number elevate closer to 6 this year. That's just my personal preference. If you want to be a Kittle or a Kelsey, it's even higher than that. You look at their averages throughout their career, around 9, 8.5, 9, somewhere around there. I'm just asking for a nice little modest bump for Tucker Kraft from 4.1 targets per game to 6. He's a guy that, he's not like Jaden Reed, obviously, right? Or Matthew Golden or Christian Watson, where, hey, you can get him involved in a jet touch pass or some orbit motion, a lot of that pre-snap motion. Tucker Kraft's a pass catcher. He's a tight end. And so that's how you get him the ball. And I think elevating him from 4.1 targets per game will do wonders for the rest of this offense because I think Tucker Kraft's that good. And again, keep in mind, 707 yards receiving last year on just 70 targets. In the franchise record for a tight end in a season is 814, and second is Jermichael Finley with 767. I bring that up to say I would not be surprised if Tucker Kraft breaks that record this year that Paul Kaufman set in 1983. Would not be surprised. I think he's that good. I think if Matt LaFleur is genuine in his words that he used back in January, talking about featuring Tucker Kraft within this passing game on this offense, that franchise mark set by Kaufman in 83 should be very, very attainable. Again, for a guy who put up 707 last year with just 4.1 targets per game. I like everything about Tucker Kraft. Model of consistency. When he has the ball in his hands, you just feel so damn confident that something really good's going to happen. And he's a complete tight end. He likes to get in the trenches, likes to do the dirty work. Green Bay, to me, hit the jackpot by drafting Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State a couple of years back, now entering his third season. To me, he could become, I think by the end of 2025, we could look at Tucker Kraft and say, hey, that's an emerging star at the tight end position. If things go according to plan and Tucker Kraft stays on the trajectory that he left 2024 on, by the end of this upcoming season, we could look at Tucker Kraft and say, that's one of the best damn tight ends in the entire league. I honestly believe he's that good. So we'll have to wait and see. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Always appreciative of all the support. 3 players on the Packers that I think can elevate into stardom this year. The second one, we got to go to the other side of the ball. It's Edgerrin Cooper. You're talking about a guy who, as a rookie, the numbers with Edgerrin Cooper are insane when you look at the sample size. This is a guy who logged 45% of the snaps total on defense as a rookie, which isn't bad, right? But was there a player, I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this, guys and gals. Was there a player on the Packers last year that fans wanted to see play more and more and more? Was there a player greater on the roster in that category than Edgerrin Cooper? Because I feel like I had a lot of videos last year during the season, dating back even to week 1 against Philadelphia where he hardly played, where I was like, I want to see more Edgerrin Cooper. And as the season went on, we saw it go, those snap count totals go higher and higher and higher, but I kept saying, I want to see more Edgerrin Cooper. Guy logged 45% of the snaps as a rookie, less than half. Yet he led the team in tackles for loss with 13. Scooped up an all-pro vote. Was all-rookie defensive team. Finished his year being named the NFC Defensive Player of the Month. Not Rookie of the Month on defense. Finished his rookie campaign as the NFC Defensive Player of the Month. Was probably at his best when Jeff Hafley said, screw it, cut him loose. Hey, go get the quarterback. Again, this is a guy who led the team in tackles for loss with 13 and played less than half the snaps. 77 tackles, ranked 6th on the team, had 3.5 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, and played 45% of the snaps on defense. Matt LaFleur talking about Edgerrin Cooper just back in May a couple of months ago. He said, and I quote, he's talking about Cooper, he is so much more confident. His body looks different. I don't know if you guys could tell, but he's like 240 pounds right now. He added weight, and he still looks like he's moving as good as he did a year ago. I'm really excited about him. Edgerrin Cooper is going to be a star. And I mentioned played 45% of the snaps last year, but finished his campaign, put a bow on the show, by being the NFC Defensive Player of the Month, and in the last 3 games, including the playoff loss to Philadelphia, logged snap count totals of 99, 94, and 100%. Green Bay clearly started to see what they have in Edgerrin Cooper, and I don't mind them for sort of slowly bringing him along the way. You didn't want to put too much on his plate. There was an injury that cost him 3 games in the kind of back half of the season, more towards the end of it than the middle. But Edgerrin Cooper finished the season with a bang. When he was on the field, he was a lightning bolt. He is a guy that adds so much shock value that an opposing offense has to worry about. He's getting better in coverage, but I do think right now he's still at his best when you just cut it loose and let him go after the quarterback. I'm so damn excited about Edgerrin Cooper, a name that, again, if you go and watch videos from last season, which I don't blame you for not doing that now, but if you recall, if you were one that watched some of those videos, I raved and then pleaded for the Packers to give this guy more and more snaps throughout the season. And many fans did. I mean, almost everyone did. Again, I don't think there was a player on the roster last year that fans were lobbying to get more snap count totals, to get that total up, than Edgerrin Cooper. Star in the making. You zoom out the microscope and look outside of the lens of from a Green Bay prism, I guess. And these national analysts are talking about Edgerrin Cooper being a star in the NFL. I'm trying to pull up a tweet I just saw from Mina Kimes of ESPN recently. And she was talking about Edgerrin Cooper. Okay. So Jeremy Fowler of ESPN put out an article where executive and coaches and scouts, all of them pooled together, they ranked the top 10 off-ball linebackers in the NFL. And Mina Kimes quoted the article instead, he is still breaking out, but I'm surprised Edgerrin Cooper didn't get any nods here. The next star linebacker, in my opinion. And she shares that opinion with many others. Put on more weight this offseason. LaFleur saying he's still every bit as fast as he was last year as a rookie when he was more slimmed down. I'm so smitten on what Edgerrin Cooper can be. I don't want to put too many expectations or labels on what I think Edgerrin Cooper might end up being, but if I want to stick my neck out a little bit, I'll say there's differences in the style of play, right? But I will say this. Edgerrin Cooper, to me, could have a ceiling where he has the impact that Clay Matthews had on Packers defenses when he was in his prime. When Clay Matthews was at the peak of his powers, I could see Edgerrin Cooper having that impact on the Packers defense, maybe as early as this year, certainly moving forward. They got an absolute stud, an absolute gem in the second round out of Texas A&M, I believe, for Edgerrin Cooper. I'm so high on his stock. I'm buying all Edgerrin Cooper stock entering the 2025 season. Last guy on this list. 3 players, I think, for the Packers that could elevate into stardom in 2025. There's a lot of candidates. I went with Devontae Wyatt. Might be a surprise to some of you. Hear me out. Because it might seem odd putting a player who's set to enter their 4th year into the elevate into stardom category. Wyatt fits the bill. Had a brilliant first 4 games last year before an ankle injury cost him the next 3, and he wasn't able to fully rebound. This is a guy, too, who, you watch those first, 3.5, because he exited the fourth game. I believe it was a home game against Minnesota to end the month of September. He exited that game early with the injury and then missed the next 3 or 4 games. I believe it was 3. Devonte Wyatt has had these spurts throughout his first 3 years. He's had these stretches of games where it might not be 3 in a row, but it might be 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4. And he's had these stretches where it looks like he's right on the cusp of a breakout, where it looks like, oh, damn, Devonte Wyatt is going to be a star. He is putting it all together. And I thought that first month last year, that's exactly what we were seeing. Philadelphia, Indianapolis, Tennessee, Minnesota. And this dude was everywhere up front on the defensive line for Green Bay as far as just being a havoc wrecker. And then the injury happened. He was never able to fully put the puzzle back together. Why I think he's a perfect candidate this year, there's a couple of reasons. One, staying healthy is paramount. It's key to all of this for not only Wyatt, but for any player. You know, you're talking about a player that you think can jump into being a star or a superstar. Health is wealth, right? Another reason for Wyatt is Green Bay picked up his 5th-year option. It sounds like Goody and company want to work out something long-term with Wyatt, but they picked up his 5th-year option earlier this offseason. Why does that matter? Well, Devonte Wyatt was set to enter a contract year this year, coming off his rookie deal. There's a lot that can go on up here with the mentals when you're playing in a contract year. There's a lot more pressure. Wyatt is still playing for a lot. He's still playing for that next big contract. He now, though, has the financial security to be like, okay, I've got this year and I've got that 5th year next year because they picked up my option. There's a little more wiggle room. There's a little more comfortability for Devonte Wyatt to settle in, let his game do the talking. It's not, hey, you better step up, stay healthy, show it all this year to earn that big deal. Now there's a little more flexibility. And I think mentally that could do wonders for Devonte Wyatt or any player in a similar situation. And knowing that this is not some gigantic, huge, prove-it year to earn a big contract. He's got that 5th-year option that was scooped up by Green Bay. Secondly, Kenny Clark is the tag team partner. Kenny Clark is the veteran of the group. Kenny Clark had his worst season to date in 2024. We have since found out from Kenny Clark himself, foot injury, suffered week 1 against Philadelphia, just rolled with the punches through the rest of the season. Again, that's not a week 9, week 10 injury. It was week 1, playing on that crappy surface in Brazil against the Eagles. Kenny Clark has off-season foot surgery. Kenny Clark being back at 100% or close to it. Kenny Clark being the Kenny Clark we have seen for damn near a decade in Green Bay since being a first-round pick out of UCLA will open up things for Devonte Wyatt. Kenny Clark getting back to being Kenny Clark helps Devonte Wyatt. That's a duo on the interior of the defensive line. That's a tag team partnership. Kenny Clark being the guy that we know he is, instead of the version we saw in 2024, will immensely help Devonte Wyatt. Open up opportunities, avenues, lanes for him, where teams are going to be like, damn, we gotta worry about a 2-headed monster here. Where last year Kenny Clark just he didn't have it. The numbers dipped, the production dipped, the efficiency dipped. Wyatt burst onto the scene for the first month. Boom, injury, out for 3 weeks. There are a lot of things lining up in favor of Devonte Wyatt. You have financial security for another year. You've got your tag team partner who's hopefully back at 100%. And we've seen it in instances through his first 3 years where he goes through these stretches and you're like, oh, this is a guy who's figuring it out. This is a guy who's putting it together. Former first-round pick out of Georgia, same draft class as Quay Walker. Remember, the Packers had 2 first-round picks that year. 4 years ago, took Quay Walker and Devonte Wyatt, a pair of Georgia Bulldogs on the defensive side. Wyatt's had too many periods, stretches throughout his first 3 years where he is right on the precipice of a breakout. Now we got to see him do it in 2025. This is a huge, huge year for Devonte Wyatt. I believe if he's able to stay on the field, and keep in mind, this is the first time he's going to be a full-time starter. TJ Slayton started every single game the last 2 years. Kind of quietly flew under the radar in that regard because he's not a stat sheet stuffer. He kind of just clogs lanes, which is a valuable trait to carry. Clogs lanes, does better in the running game. Slayton's gone. Where'd he go? Cincinnati, right? This will be the first year Devontae Wyatt's a full-time starter. It's a huge, huge year for him, for the trajectory of his career, and also because I think if he's healthy, when we look back at the chapters that are written for this 2025 team, and we can hone in on the defense here, we'll say, man, Devontae Wyatt, they got a real damn good one on the interior of that defensive line. Those are my three. Let me know what you guys think. 3 players, Packers, that I think will take that leap into stardom this year. Tucker Kraft, Edgerrin Cooper, Devontae Wyatt. There's many more. Your list could look different than mine. That's completely fine. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Always appreciative of all the support. Please click the subscribe button. We're right near 200. Would love to get there before training camp. Would love to be there by the end of training camp if we need to stretch it out a little bit longer. Again, give me your thoughts. Always appreciate those who interact with the videos, like, comment, subscribe for sure. And we'll see you next time.